Eugenie Sage.
Thank you, Mr Chair. Dealing with some of the issues that the Minister raised around Clause 18. And when you look at the Australian State of the Environment legislation, of course, it's got a very different model. It protects the independence of the reporting because there's an independent panel of experts that do the reporting. I've just been looking at the legislation, Minister, so I'm surprised you're shaking your head. Those people might be appointed by the Minister, but they are independent. So here, in this system, we're having government agencies do the reporting. Therefore, in our view, there needs to be an independence in the way the topics are set, which is why the Supplementary Order Paper 87 provides for those topics to be set by the Government Statistician and the Secretary for the Environment. Now, Mr Paul Foster-Bell raised the issue of expenditure. We will shortly be doing we are in Select Committee, review of estimates. That whole process is where you review, not you, Mr Speaker, where we review expenditure, not trying to do it in a backdoor way through the State of the Environment reports. So there was a major concern from a number of submitters about the lack of public confidence and trust in State of the Environment reports if ministers were setting topics. So this supplementary order paper responds to the concerns of submitters. And I think, Minister, given your support for collaborative processes for the Land and Water Forum, given the comments made by the Honourable Ruth Dyson, this Parliament could support this bill if there was a more collaborative process was shown and that you took on board the amendments that are being suggested, which aren't changing the overall thrust of the bill, which aren't undermining the need for State of the Environment reporting, but are intended to make sure that it is much more robust and that the public have trust and confidence in it. And why we need that is because of previous examples of political interference, both with the State of the Environment report itself in 2007 and examples of the Minister intervening to ensure that things like submissions on the Ruataniwha irrigation project by the Department of Conservation didn't proceed. And we have at the moment huge destruction of wetlands in Northland from swamp kauri mining. The Minister for Primary Industries thinks that's fine. It may well be that the Minister for the Environment doesn't want wetland loss and destruction reported on. So that's not a topic that's reported on. So if this SOP was to go ahead, it would make sure there is more independence. The Minister has referred to the Statistics Act. That Act was passed in 1975. We had a different public sector then. It was much more independent and robust, much less prone to influence by the Minister or ministers. And in that legislation, the Department of Statistics sets the topics. The Minister simply approves the surveys. He or she does not actually decide the topics that are to be reported on. So in dealing with Clause 18, going on to Clause 19, this is a new clause in the Supplementary Order Paper, again to strengthen the bill, to have the Parliamentary Commissioner for the Environment actually review and report on the Act's operation, not just provide a commentary on the State of the Environment reports. And another amendment that the Green Party is seeking is in an amendment on the table of the House, and it follows on and complements, I think, the very useful amendment that Sir William Seo is proposing and which the Green Party will be supporting in terms of looking at the impact on the Pacific region's climate, ecosystems and people. The Green Party also wants greater work done through the State of the Environment reporting on greenhouse gas emissions. So this amendment requires the Environmental Protection Agency to produce and publish a report at least 6 months after the Act comes into force, which lists the 100 largest emitters of greenhouse gas. And the EPA already collects this information on emitters, but it doesn't release it publicly. And we think it would help New Zealand do its fair share in reducing emissions and helping to stabilise the climate, preventing runaway climate change if we knew the source of emissions for our major emitters and what organisations were responsible for those. So it would help inform the development of government policy, and it would help inform the New Zealand public. Mr Chair.
Eugenie Sage.
Thank you, Mr Chair. And the Minister has pointed to Australia. Well, there's a similar requirement to the one in this amendment in the National Greenhouse and Energy Reporting Act in Australia. So we are going to Paris later this year, yet this government is failing to actually have a decent target for reducing emissions. If we have reporting in this bill on the major emitters, we will have a better understanding of the source of those emissions. So just moving now to some of the other changes that the Supplementary Order Paper 87 provides. One of them is to ensure that where there are any gaps or limitation in the data that's a subject of reports, that's identified in both the synthesis and the domain reports so that the public can understand those gaps and so that we have a continuous feedback loop which leads to improvements in future reports, because where gaps are identified, then agencies can take it upon themselves to fill those gaps in terms of future monitoring and reporting. And again, that responds to some of the concerns of submitters about the very narrow range of matters that are to be reported on in Clause 18 and the thresholds there that are quite high, because if a pressure topic or impact if a pressure topic or impact topic is to be reported on, it's got to affect significant areas or significant resources or numbers of people. There may well be new pests in the marine sphere or on land, which are only affecting a small number of species at the moment, having limited impact, but it might be of value in the reporting to ensure that their impacts are described so that there can be a prompt response. So if you have an assurance that gaps in the reporting are to be addressed, then those sorts of issues can be dealt with. And Mr Speaker, at the moment, we continue to oppose this bill. We would encourage the Minister to respond to the SOP, to recognise that it is much better to have legislation which has the support of the whole Parliament, and that can be achieved by responding in a positive manner to the constructive amendments which both the Labour Party and the Green Party have put forward in a genuine attempt to improve the bill, to make sure that it is robust, that it provides for independent state of the environment reporting, and that there are improvements to reports year on year, because gaps are noted and identified.
Mr Speaker.
The Honourable